Have your attention, grab a seat.
Do you have like
Everybody over here? Okay. All right.
Silence your phone.
Yes, please keep your
Like in the movie,
phone
silence
silence. All right. Okay, well, welcome to the next part of our wonderful farmer evening with our fantastic dinner behind us. And now we're going to talk to some farmers and see what's going on in our area. And we have 3 different panelists here. And they're all doing something a little bit different, but I think you'll find that they all have a lot in common as they talk about their work. The first, I have Frank over here, Frank O'Grady. Frank started a bio-intensive garden on the grounds of Sonnewald this past summer. Now, if you're not from around here, Sonnewald Natural Foods has been, oh my gosh, has been a natural organic farm since the 50s.
40s.
40s.
Mid-40s.
Yes, yes. This is Willa Lefevre. Her parents started Sonnewald many years ago. Loved your ball. Anyway, I don't do this all the time. I do this at commercials, I'm sorry. Okay, it's a 60-acre farm, and they have a natural food store now that they built on the premises, as well as a natural living institute where they teach people how to live a natural organic lifestyle. Correct?
Sustainably. Yes.
Sustainably.
Promoting all aspects of sustainable living.
Okay. And Frank, he's going to talk about the bio-intensive garden that he planted on their grounds. Okay. Sunnyside Farms, over here, is Claire O'Brien. Claire and her parents, Homer Walden and Drew Peters, operate Sunnyside Farm in Dover. And Dover, they raise beef and pork and chicken and eggs and veggies and herbs. And let me tell you, now is the time to put a deposit down for your Thanksgiving turkey. Right now. Right now. You go online and put a deposit down. And they set up at farmers markets. They're in Hershey, they're in Towson. They're a big part of Buy Fresh, Buy Local. Drew's mom, Claire's mom does the, I think she does the whole book, puts it all together. Anyway, I'll let her talk more about her work because Claire actually started a whole different segment of the farm called Sunnyside Flowers. So she can talk about her work. And then in the middle we have Metta Barbour. And Metta's job is, she's on the board of York Fresh Food Farms. And York Fresh Food Farms started to help teach kids and families in an urban setting how to grow real food. And she's going to talk about the success of that because this is their first year, correct? Just got
It's like our 3rd month.
Absolutely. So I'm really excited about it.
We're really fresh.
And Bruce Mans is the farm manager, the farmer that oversees it, and he is so passionate about this project. And his day job is that he's a plant buyer at Miller's Plant Farm, which is some of the best plants you can get around here. So he's perfect to do this.
So, as Karen introduced, I run a small family farm with my parents. Our mailing address is Dover. Based on location, we're in Newberrytown, Edders area. Karen is our librarian. So we have about 13 acres. We do beef, pork, chicken, Thanksgiving turkeys, eggs, produce, and I've just launched cut flowers. We started farming full-time about 6 years ago. We moved up to this property. We started many years ago, 15, about doing just the eggs, and everybody loved it. Everybody then loved the chicken that we added on. Everybody loved the beef that we added on. The leased land that we had at that point, we wanted to do pork. Some owners said yes, some said no, and we said it's about time for us to go get our own farm. So we purchased the property up here. It's worked out really well. I joined full-time about 2 years ago. My degree is in GIS, so I was sitting at a computer for a couple of years inside and said, maybe my parents aren't so crazy working outside.
Yeah.
So I've helped them with the produce side, and I've also launched the cut flowers. I have taken our website that was just informational, and I've also built it out so that we no longer do a vegetable CSA. You can order online, so you get a weekly update that says, here's what we have, here's what's in season, what would you like, and you can come and pick up at any of our various locations. So it is just the three of us. We have a few volunteers, we have some CSA members who want us to remain in business and will come and help us. We have one intern who comes Mondays and Tuesdays, arrives at 7, is done by 9. That's it. We are farmers. We get up early. People say, I'm going to be there early. And I say, you might want to double check with us what time is early. I think that covers it. I mean, we have 13 acres, about 1 acre in vegetable, half an acre in flowers this year. That is definitely my new favorite. I'm doing cut flowers for CSAs, for events. I have a couple of weddings booked already for 2017.
Yay.
Yeah. And I also sell to florists in the area, so it's a great venture. It's a great venture. I'll pass it on to Metta now.
Okay, and I can attest to how good Sunnyside Farm's turkeys are, because we've had those at Thanksgiving. And I can also say that if you had any of their pork last year, part of its diets were apples from my yard. So
That's true. Actually, that would be what we ate last year.
that's right. It was very good. So I am not a farmer. I'm a suburban girl, and even worse than that, I'm an attorney. Bruce Manns and I met as master gardeners, just to tell you what the evolution of this project has been. We met as on the first day of master gardener training at the Penn State Extension in 2012, and talked a lot about our different interests over the weeks that we were taking these courses. And he and I ended up hooking up with the York County, what became the York County Food Alliance, which looks at the food system and tries to address barriers to access to healthy food and access to local nutritious food. I now chair the York County Food Alliance, and as part of its community gardening initiative, I got interested in urban farming because I think, particularly in York, the Unitarians here probably have the most successful community garden in the whole county in terms of both volume and longevity and continued enthusiasm. But that's not happening in all the gardens, and there is not, as there is in many places, a real kind of a garden ethic where you've got lots of people interested in plants. I lived in Wilmington for a couple of years, and they have an urban horticulture organization that does garden contests, and in Wilmington you could find people gardening everywhere, and I'm not sure that that's happening so much in York. So Bruce and I are not only committed to providing access to nutritious food for everybody, but also trying to urge people to grow their own food and being a source of nutritious food. So we've been working for about 2 years to start an urban farm in the city of York. We had a budget, and we finally raised enough money to start farming at the end of June. And so then it took us about 5 weeks to have the water run. We have electricity run to it, and we also have we had to fence the front of the property on Willis Road. We are located in the Parkway Homes Public Housing Development. If you know York, we're at 150 Willis Road. So if you know York and you're driving north on George Street from Philadelphia, the second light is Stagmeyer Florist. You make a left turn, that's Parkway. You drive a block and a half and Parkway splits, and there's a road off to the right that goes all the way to Pennsylvania Avenue, and that's Willis Road. And that split there forms a triangle of Parkway, Willis, and North Pershing, and we're within that triangle, and we're kind of in the middle of that. And I tell you that because if you'd like to stop by and see our operation, you're welcome to do that. Our farmer Bruce Manns, what we have, let me go back. We are working under a cooperation agreement with the Housing Authority that has allowed us to farm the land and given us a commitment to let us be there at least 3 years. So the land, as far as we know, there might have been some other houses on Willis Road that aren't there now, but the major portion of the area we're farming, which the whole area is about 1.5 acres, and we're probably farming on something under 3/4 of an acre, has not been farmed for 50 or 60 years. The housing development was put in the 60s. And across Willis Road is the original Willis Homestead, which is one of the oldest properties in York County. That's actually Manchester Township, but so we're doing production agriculture. That means we use plastic mulch, and we're irrigating with drip irrigation and fertilizing. You know all about this, yes.
It helps, it helps.
Yeah. So
Those weeds down keep everything
right,
watered.
right. So that means so Bruce the farm manager is there every day, and he's usually there between 11 and 1. So if you happen to be in York around noon and you want to stop by and talk to him, that's an experience in itself. The man is about growing vegetables, and he's about growing food for people who need food. So this year we're because we got a late start, and this is our 7th week of zucchini. 7th week, 6 weeks of zucchini. And we'll have our first broccoli crop next week, Monday. We've had collards for about a month. I think we're gonna have our first cabbages next week. We have cauliflower too, I'm not sure where that is. And we've got green beans, so we had about a gallon of green beans that are on the table back there that we picked today, and that's like the second picking of green beans. We should have green beans for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they'll get too cold. So this year, because we got a late start and we're only doing, we don't have a full season of crops, and we couldn't put in tomatoes or peppers because we didn't put in our first crops until August 1st. So we're giving everything we grow away. So next year we hope to raise enough money to have a van. Basically, we'd like to convert a step van into a mobile vegetable market, and have routes within the city, and probably 5 or 6 days a week, trying to accommodate people's schedules and the fact that many people who live in the city don't have transportation, and if they're going to go to the store, they get the necessities, and that because they can't carry that much. So that is our goal, and we would like to sell the produce, and that would make us sustainable in our 3rd year. So that's York Fresh Food Farms.
I'll take over then. My name is Frank O'Grady. I'm not really a farmer. In fact, I'm not even much of a gardener. I've only been doing this for about 3 years. I came to gardening because of my interest in permaculture and about relocalization of the economy. And I was inspired particularly by, for biointensive gardening, by Wilson Alvarez, who gave a presentation at homesteading days at Horn Farm in 2012. He was quite persuasive and quite adamant about it. And it really spoke to a lot of the concerns that permaculturalists have. The basic idea of biointensive gardening is to get the maximum yield with the minimum inputs. And of course, that goes without saying, without using any chemical pesticides or chemical fertilizers or petroleum-based additives that characterizes industrial farming. Now, I've done this, in fits and starts in my own yard for the past 3 years. Last year, I approached Willa and Bill about the opportunity of utilizing a small plot or a garden plot at Sonnewald to do this, and they agreed, as long as I would do all my own labor and really there's no money involved. They didn't have to contribute any time or labor to it. That I would just, that I would shepherd the land or nurture the land and take care of it and put my best effort into doing this project. So they gave me a plot which was about 1,700 square feet, and over the past winter I imagined 4 rows, 54 feet long by 3 feet wide, that I would double dig and then and I ordered the seeds, and the plan was to have 4 rows full of vegetables and it all brimming. But as it turns out, it took a lot more effort than I originally imagined. But actually, I mean, one of the benefits is actually, being a city kid myself, but the idea of actually spending hours and hours out in the garden and, being up at the crack of dawn and spending, 7-8 hours out there was very healing to me. So even though the yield wasn't great, there were a lot of very good psychological benefits that I did accrue from that experience. The big thing, and actually probably the biggest thing which I didn't, the biggest setback we had initially was that the whole month of May, I think there was 2 days it didn't rain all day. Yeah. So that sort of set me back quite a bit. I actually staked out the land on April 17th, and I've got a series of photos in the back of the room that you can look at that sort of like documented my journey throughout the season. The big idea, one of the main ideas of biointensive gardening is that you loosen the soil to a depth of 24 inches. The thinking being that the roots can penetrate very easily down to 24 inches, and it'll create sort of a microclimate. You can plant the plants closer together than you can in conventional gardening, where you put them in rows and have. So the idea being that you could have a larger yield, because you could. Probably the best way to think of a microclimate is the way grass grows. All those little blades crowded together are actually creating an encouraging, synergistic environment where they can all thrive together. The idea is to plant your plants in the same way. So the big task initially was to do the double digging, and that even with the rain, one of the things I didn't encounter or didn't anticipate was in that garden area, at about the 12-inch depth, there's a layer of shale, which required that I actually take an axe or a mattock and drill down there. So being crazy and like motivated as I am, I actually stuck with it. It took me until about June 20th to get the first 54-foot row dug, and I had already ordered from Miller's Plant Farm like 175 sweet potato plants, which I immediately planted as soon as I finished the row. And as it turns out, that's the main big crop we have. We probably have about 1,000 pounds, which I'm planning on digging tomorrow and Sunday to see what they actually look like. But the plants themselves did quite well with the loosened soil. I also planted some carrots, which didn't do well, and some onions, which did. It was only a small quantity of onions. But the big success was the sweet potatoes. The other thing I did throughout the summer was pull a lot of weeds. So in effect, I mean, as I was going along, my plan was to keep double digging, but a prerequisite to doing that was getting the weeds out of the way. And of course, the land that I have is so fertile that the weeds just like pop up, and like days after I pull them, they're there again. So I probably, in fact, there are several pictures of like huge mountains of weeds, which Bill Kaiser would take and put into their compost area. So like I created a lot of green manure, and I didn't require a lot of expertise because it grew naturally. But that's a lot of what I spent my time doing, is pulling that out. And just recently I started digging a second row, which I'm planning on digging until the hard frost comes, hopefully, late in December, and see if I can get a head start on next season's efforts. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else, and that's kind of the general philosophy. I mean, you can ask questions in the Q&A about specific things I've done, but I'm not really an experienced gardener. In fact, this job was mostly more like ditch digging than really scientific agriculture. But I'm planting seeds for the future because I'm hoping to encourage other people, say younger people, to take over this job in the future and reap the benefits of what I've sown. So that's kind of my story.
How are your hands?
Not too bad.
All right.
Yeah, not too bad.
Any questions? Any questions for any of the panelists?
Hey, Claire, so you and your parents run an operation that has eggs as well,
Yes.
right? So in my experience, city bought grocery store eggs and country eggs. They look a little different.
How so?
Well, the yolk is bigger. Can you tell us a little about?
Sure, I can tell you a little bit. So it actually depends usually, one, on the variety of chicken that you're getting. In our case, we grow all heritage breed birds, which are older birds. They're not a production bird, so they don't lay an egg every day. They lay about every 72 hours or so. So it's about two eggs every 3 days. Another thing that we do is all of our egg layers are out on grass. They are not roaming free, because what we found when they roam free, everything likes chicken. And our chickens will disappear. Our chickens will disappear. So we have built, my stepfather Homer is an experimental model maker in years past. He has done some variations on traditional pens that are look like a pup tent, where they are triangular shaped. They are open bottomed with sides and a top. And he's built them so that they are easy to roll and to move around. So they get moved every day. Our egg layers get moved every day. Our turkeys and our broilers get moved every day. So do the pigs while they're still small. When they get larger, they actually get really big. The pigs are in the same pen, and they actually dig up our flower beds. They make it really easy. There's a great video. Randy actually took the video of our pig power that dig up the garden beds. It makes it really easy. Work smarter, not harder. Although I have to say that the ditch digging, the other thing about farming, it's just moving heavy stuff from one point to another. He's a farmer. He is a farmer.
And weeding.
Yes, and weeding.
Yeah.
And weeding.
Yeah, it never ends.
Never ends.
I have a question about weeding.
Yes.
I heard the tail end of a Diane Rehm interview with some guy written a book about the microenvironment of the soil,
Yes, that's very important.
and the idea was to not disturb it. And
Yes.
so he was arguing that to dig a weed out by the roots was actually destructive to the soil microclimate, and his argument was that the garden was healthier, the crops were better, the system worked better by actually not ripping the root out or digging it out or the weed out by the root. What's your thought about that?
He could be right. I mean, I did it the way he recommended not to do it. I would actually dig the root out to as much as possible, because these weeds are relentless. I'd like to see if I can stop them growing constantly.
Right.
But there may be a point to what he's saying.
So there is a trend in agriculture toward no-till.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, because it prevents erosion. And if you know that seeds in general, but weed seeds in particular, can last thousands of years, so that every time you turn up the soil, you're exposing weed seeds that may have been there long before you were born to the conditions that are conducive to them growing. So, yes, and the idea of the microclimate in the soil is and all those little microorganisms interacting with the roots of the plants you're growing, that's all really important stuff.
Let me add one thing, like, I've watched a lot of the videos put up by John Jevons, who's sort of the godfather of biointensive gardening, and he does recommend pulling the weeds up by the root, you know, digging them out, roots and all, so that's why I followed his advice.
Speaking of the weeds, you mentioned that you had a big, huge pile of composting weeds.
Right.
If you let the weeds break down to compost, don't you then end up with more weed seeds? And then if you use that as
Yes.
compost, you're
Yeah.
just
Yes,
planting more
Yes,
weeds?
so,
yes.
So how did you dispose of all those weeds?
well, I didn't, I mean, I didn't remove the seeds, the compost includes weed seed, for sure.
If it gets hot enough, it'll kill the seeds, okay? But I'm not sure that your home compost is gonna do that. Now, the good thing about York County is that you all must know this, that household waste does not go to the landfill in York County. It goes to the incinerator. And they're incinerating household waste to create electricity, and they're creating enough electricity at the Solid Waste Authority to light 40,000 homes, which is about the size of the city of York. So that's one of the answers. That's where my weeds go.
To light bulbs.
A question about urban gardening, which I
Yes.
totally support. But a question I've always had was, in an urban setting, all the soot, the exhaust from cars, all the stuff in the soil that's, you know, from ages and ages of building and tearing down and all that. How do you ensure that an urban garden soil is good?
You get it tested. Okay, so we've had our soil tested twice, so any of you who, if you're scientifically minded, as Penn State teaches us, you have your soil tested before you plant. And they'll tell you what the percentage of organic matter is, and if you pay a lot more money, they'll tell you what bad minerals are, you know, they'll test for lead and they'll test for all kinds of things. So we've had our soil tested. And as I said, this area of York was not a commercial, you know, they weren't manufacturing chemicals, and there wasn't a gas station on it. This was probably farmland for 100 years. Now, we can't establish that for certain, but we think so. Now, there are certain areas in York that you can't even build a residence on because it's been poisoned by chemicals, industrial chemicals. But this isn't that, and you have to find the right spot. But even if you've got an area that's contaminated, you can seal the soil with agricultural products and then grow above the soil. And they're doing that. I mean, that's not an unusual way to grow, say, greens or spinach under what's called a high tunnel or a hoop house, which are those big, long tunnels, plastic greenhouses. And you can grow in this area, and as we get warmer, you can do it more.
Yeah.
You can grow 12 months of the year, you can grow greens 12 months of the year here, under plastic.
Yes.
And they're doing that.
We do that.
Yeah.
We do that year round. Somebody just this week asked, as I was delivering down in Baltimore, your season's almost over. And I said, oh, no, we go year round. We'll bring you spinach in the winter and we'll bring you eggs in the winter.
Wow.
So, that's pretty great. Yeah. Along with the soil and the soil testing, we do get our soil tested as well, more than once a year. And I'm in the Redland Library, and the reason why do they call it Redland in my area? Because the land is red. It is solid clay. So we put compost down directly and plant in the compost, mix it in really well. Yeah. Any other questions?
One thing I want to bring to your attention relative to this issue about the soil, one of the benefits I have is that Willa's father, Tim Lefevre, bought this farm in 1950. Prior to that, there had never been industrial chemicals on it. And because he was an advocate of organic farming practices very early on, it has never had it to this day. So I'm working on land that's as pristine as you could possibly have, which is really a huge benefit.
Your different livestock operations, how many of what animals and birds do you have?
So, at any given time, we will have about 300 to 400 egg layers. Sounds like a lot. We have a couple hundred broilers at a time, and then we have 10 head of cattle right now and 4 pigs. It's just the 3 of us.
Your feed, where's it coming from?
We get from, I believe, Bauman's. We have changed in the past, but I believe that's where we're getting from now. I am not in charge of. I am not in charge of the livestock operation. I do produce and flowers. I can speak to how good everything is, and I can tell you how to water everything and where to get the feed. I can't tell the details about that. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of people wonder if these advantageous methods of farming are scalable to, how scalable are they to compete against, I don't know what you call it, industrial farming or factory farming, to feed, millions and millions of people?
To feed millions and millions of people. That's never been my goal. I like to feed. I like to know my customers. I like to know. We sell directly to customers for turkeys, for eggs, for chicken, beef. We sell to restaurants with our produce, with our eggs as well, and we have relationships with all of those people. Like I said, we do have about 400 egg layers at a time. That is pretty large for an outdoor operation. People tend to boggle at that. We have figured out how to do that in a way that is economically sustainable for us. It's sustainable for both the ground and for us as farmers to make money at it. We do make money at the eggs. The eggs, we certainly make money at. A couple of our other products, maybe not so much. We'll get there. But eggs are definitely a sustainable, both economically and for the land.
So my answer to that is, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we're growing organically with organic methods. We're not certified organic, but we're growing with organic methods, and we're not. Let me put it this way: if you know the Healthy York County Coalition. Has done, with WellSpan, has done surveys of health habits in York County, and only about 3% of York Countyans eat 4%. Okay, 4%. Thank you, Terry. Only about 4% of York Countyans are eating the recommended amount. 50% of your plate is vegetables. The recommended servings of vegetables daily. So we figure there's lots of room for people to buy vegetables, and we think, at least in the city of York, people will appreciate knowing where their food comes from, knowing that it's organically grown, and being able to have it come to them in their neighborhoods. So we're not, most of the agriculture in York County is commercial agriculture, and they're growing corn and soybeans, and they're not growing it for people to eat. So there aren't enough farmers in York County growing vegetables, frankly. So those of us who make an effort to go to the farmer's market or city central market or order from Sunnyside Farm, Yeah, we can, there's no problem getting vegetables, and it looks like there's a lot, but there's, that's not so many York Countyans that are doing that. And there needs to be more.
Let me weigh in on this. There's no way that this kind of approach to growing food will be scalable with a ratio of 1% of people doing the work and 99% of the people consuming it. We're going to have a massive repopulation of the countryside with people actually working the land to approach. I mean, it won't be exactly the same because we couldn't possibly do what industrial farming is doing, but of course it's doing a lot of very terrible things too. But certainly we could have a decent society ratio of producers and consumers, such as you had maybe 150 years ago in America, where you had many more people working the land and participating in the communities around the farm.
I think we need like one more question.
I was
Go
just gonna
ahead.
the alliance that you're doing for the city kids, have you thought about going into the schools and talking to the kids about this kind of stuff? Because if you're trying to foster the next generation to doing this kind of stuff, are
Okay,
you thinking about doing that?
we have thought about that, and actually, there is an organization called an initiative that includes the City of York Bureau of Health and the YMCA called Eat, Play, Breathe, and they've gotten a fairly sizable grant to put more fresh veg into the public schools. Our nearest school is Ferguson, which is I think it's K through 8, and we have sought meetings with them, but it's hard to get them to answer the phone. but that's okay. Like I say, this year we're just starting out. Next year we hope to have programming for kids and adults and anyone else who's interested. And we eventually, I think we will have a partnership with a local school, and I think that will be very important. But I think we need to. We're in the process of growing into that.
There's also a farm to school initiative where farmers go into the schools. I think that's I want to say that's in October.
There's Know Your Farmer month.
Yes,
Where there's a bunch of events around that.
There's a number of different, but Linda Gallagher from Browns and Joanne from Wellspan, they organize some farmers going into some of the schools, and I want to say that's in October. That should be coming.
Well, actually, there is an event on October 25th at Spring Grove.
Yes.
To celebrate the fact that Spring Grove has a Future Farmers of America very active chapter. They have a Bring Your Tractor to School Day. They grow veg for the cafeteria. Their food director is has tastings and has all kinds of things going on to get the kids interested in local vegetables and local produce. And there is some sort of an event to celebrate their to celebrate the work that they're doing there in Spring Grove.